Let's get straight into one of the biggest stories this week, and this is the long-awaited decision. Finally, we got yesterday. Boris Johnson was going to allow a limited role for Huawei, the Chinese company, in the UK's ongoing 5G networks. Now, he faced down opposition from the likes of his Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, previously also his Home Secretary, Priti Patel, and a number of figures in the intelligence and security community who'd expressed concerns, along with, of course, the American President Donald Trump, our strongest ally on defence and security. However, he decided to go ahead with the decision to allow Huawei to play a limited role, despite that, so that he can roll out a broadband and deliver that fast broadband pledge he made to deliver by 2025 across the entire country. Well, let's talk about this decision with the Culture Secretary, Baroness Nicky Morgan, who joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
There was, by all accounts, something of a heated debate in this 90-minute meeting yesterday and the National Security Council when the Defence Secretary warned that this was not perhaps the right move. Do you think that the Prime Minister has made the right move?
Well, I do think the Prime Minister has made the right move. I can't comment, obviously, on discussions around the National Security Council. But I mean, I can say, for all of us, it was not an easy decision because clearly, although it was a decision about who we involve in our 5G networks, we all know that there are bigger factors that have to be taken into account as well. But I think it is the right decision, and it balances, obviously, national security and how we deal with high-risk vendors such as Huawei, but also, as you say, the building out, the rollout of 5G networks, which offer huge opportunities for this country, better connectivity for all. And that's something that we have, as you say, made a manifesto pledge, but we want to see.
It does sound extraordinary, though, that we're rolling out a 5G network with a company we consider to be a high-risk vendor, which we know engages in huge levels of cyber warfare, closely linked to the Chinese government. It does seem extraordinary. It's a little bit of a, oh, well, we can't do anything about it. We'll just try and guard against it. There aren't any other options to deliver this manifesto pledge. Is this putting re-election next time round and meeting those pledges ahead of the national security of this country?
No, and I can absolutely guarantee that in making that decision yesterday, we would never compromise national security in order to have the rollout of 5G. Even though we had obviously made that commitment, because national security absolutely has to be paramount. But Huawei have been involved in our 4G networks. I mean, they've been involved in telecoms equipment for over a decade, which means in the UK, which means that we as a country have more understanding of Huawei and its business and how it operates than any other country around the world. And so that gave us the confidence. And, yesterday, obviously, we had advice from a number of different agencies that actually we could mitigate the risks. And we all want the networks to be reliable. And that means we have to have a number of different providers. And that's why we have said Huawei will not be involved in the core. You're right, you used the phrase limited involvement. And that's right. But Huawei will be involved in what we call the periphery, the mast, for example. And their involvement is limited to 35%. And look, over time, we'd like to get to a stage where we didn't have to involve any high-risk vendors at all. But we need time to obviously diversify the number of providers there are.
There's not a problem in this country, and maybe it's perhaps across the West as well, but particularly in this country where there are lots of things we want to do: build more houses, improve our transport infrastructure, improve our 5G, our broadband. And we don't seem to have any of those skills in this country. We don't have the companies, we don't have the people to do the work. We're told we need to import our top scientists and mathematicians because we don't have those either. Are we not supposed to be a proud, strong economic powerhouse country in which is why do we not have these resources? Why do we not have these companies here?
Well, I think we do have many of the companies here, and we certainly have many of the individuals. I mean, I've been going around, obviously, with my brief, meeting brilliant people in the digital and tech space, the research that's going on, the use of 5G and digital work. But I mean, certainly at the top end, actually, we need that international. And we, of course, have a number of our brilliant scientists who will go and work overseas and will benefit from working with others around the world. And we have people coming here. But we are, of course, making our education system changes to encourage people to be aware of the digital careers that are on offer. More use of coding, for example. We know we need more girls to be in tech, so working with the sector. So you've got to have all of these different things. But there's no doubt there's been a market failure just in relation to the telecoms equipment provided by companies. It's not just Huawei, but obviously the other providers are Nokia and Ericsson, who again are overseas. And we do need to do more to build up our own. And that's something we'd like to work with the US, for example, in. They will have companies, and perhaps we can work with them to diversify the market.
Okay, let's stick with the link with China, though, and talking about the coronavirus. The announcement this morning from British Airways that they're going to suspend all direct flights to Beijing and to Shanghai with immediate effect. Hong Kong will close their borders. We've got the Foreign Office warning against all but non-essential travel and this bid to evacuate Britons from Wuhan. Are we confident that enough is being done to contain this virus, both in China and to contain the spread here in the UK, especially given that apparently there are some 1,400 people who've got off flights direct from Wuhan in the last couple of weeks who've yet to be traced by the government?
Well, I know that the Health Department and the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, is very, very much involved with all of this. We do actually have the capacity and capability in this country. We have one of the only laboratories that actually tests for the virus. I think I understand the decision that BA have made this morning, and you're right, the Foreign Office advised all but essential travel. And of course, the Foreign Office is working very hard with staff on the ground, but also with Chinese authorities about how we will get people home from Wuhan in particular. But we are monitoring this very, very carefully. And again, it's about making sure we've got lots of people coming here. And if they haven't come direct flights, they might have come elsewhere. But again, the advice from Public Health England is about monitoring symptoms. And we know from listening that actually if people think they have got the virus, actually they are being looked after by the health system and tested very quickly. OK, well, let's come back to some topics under your brief, of course. We are hearing reports this morning, just extraordinary pictures, actually, from outside the home of the Manchester United Executive Vice Chairman Ed Woodward. His home was attacked by a group of 20 to 30 youths, some wearing balaclavas, chanting he was going to die and throwing flares at the gate. Thankfully, he wasn't there, and his family weren't there at the time. But what's your reaction to these fans angry at the performance of their football club? I think this is absolutely horrific. It's appalling. It's completely unacceptable. I'm afraid to say it's symptomatic where actually, previously, and we know that fans feel very strongly about the performance of their team. But to take it to this level, anything approaching it, unfortunately, it is symptomatic of the fact that we seem to be unable, and some people seem to be unable to make their points, to disagree without resorting to violence or these kinds of actions. Fortunately, he wasn't there in his family, but if they had been, or with their family been there on their own, it would have been absolutely terrifying. So I very much hope that these people can be tracked down and reminded, and if necessary, further action taken, that they are not able to do anything like this again. I can't believe, most fans, yes, as I say, they feel passionate, but they would not indulge in this kind of behaviour at all. Absolutely. Let's also talk about BBC. Today, we understand the BBC staff are going to receive details of the cuts to their new staff, £80 million budget saving. Hundreds of journalists could lose their jobs. Some, it'll be voluntary redundancies, some unfilled vacancies. But we've heard talk, certain shows that look like they're going to be losing money on or staff on radio and television. This after Lord Hall of Birkenhead, of course, the outgoing director of the BBC, has said that political interviews at the BBC have been too combative and contributed to a toxic political discourse. First of all, do you think that the cuts are long overdue, given the huge sums of money the BBC has to fund its output? And do you think that some of the interviews you've had have been a little bit too combative? So on the first point, I think this is very much a decision for the BBC. They obviously have an obligation to provide a high quality news output. And there are lots of programmes. There's a broader discussion to be had about the funding of the BBC. And that's going to, I suspect, unfold over the next few years, given all the other services and, news output, but other channels that there are out there as well. And I will obviously be watching with interest as the decisions that are made. I think in relation to the political interviews, and I picked this up yesterday, and I think that Lord Hall was agreeing with a comment from my former colleague Amber Rudd. And I personally feel that as a interviewer, we should be subject to robust challenge. And I think I have been on your programme and I have been elsewhere. That's absolutely right. But I think that there's no doubt that the best interviewers often will not immediately put their guests on the defensive. And actually, I think they will find they get more out of politicians if they don't do that, because otherwise we will just tend to not say anything of interest, which I think then causes more and more frustration amongst the interviewer. And going back to what I was saying about the attacks, I think we just have to, all of us in public life, just think about the cultures that we are creating when we are talking to each other in the glare of publicity. OK, well, we know everything surrounding Lord Hall's departure and these cuts is a lot of it to do with the licence fee. Gary Lineker, one of the highest paid BBC stars, £1.7 million presenting Match Today, has suggested that licence fee should become voluntary, so people wouldn't be facing certainly criminal charges or even being required to buy it to
watch their TV output. Would you support that? Are we moving towards a voluntary licence fee? And could the BBC be funded in a voluntary way like that?
Well, I mean, I think those are really big questions that need to be looked at. As I say, I
but
think
surely you are looking at them.
Well, we are. As I said, I've been very clear that I think that because the model of broadcasting has changed, because of the different channels, the way people consume media, the streaming and downloads and everything else, I think that the licence fee system does need to be looked at as the next charter is reviewed. But exactly what the model is going to be, whether it's voluntary, all sorts of things, it's too early to tell. And we have to have an extensive period of consultation to make sure, because the BBC is a very important institution, and as I say, things like high quality news, high quality children's programming is very important as part of our country, I think.
Okay, Baroness Nicky Morgan, Culture Secretary, thank you very much indeed for joining us.